Now, before we dive into Clover and Crow's story and how they parallel each other, I want to make it clear we are going to be talking about the issues surrounding the pairing as a ship, how this miscommunication affected certain viewers, and how weird and complicated representation in media is, but that is getting its own section later on because there's just so much to discuss, it needs to be its own section. I do plan on adapting that part to be its own video for ease of access for the discourse at a later date, but for right now, let us just tackle how Crow and Clover, interpreted as friends with a quirky bromance, plays out in the story. And before some of y'all claim victory in the comments, like, oh cool, Unicorn agrees Lucky Charms is 100% platonic and there's no problem, you'd probably best stick around for the Lucky Charms section later. This also goes to straight viewers who don't quite understand why representation matters in media, especially to certain groups of unrepresented, underrepresented, and marginalized people, and may be apprehensive about the subject because trust me, I get it. It is a very intimidating and complicated topic that is hard to understand, but I'm gonna try to explain it for you as best as I can. Your patience and efforts to understand are very much appreciated. Y'all are good allies. But in particular to the homophobes who just screech about gays projecting themselves where they don't belong and how we should just accept our oblivion and go out of their way to be assholes who don't try to understand what we're saying at all or simply wave it away. Well, I don't know why you're here, but please get off my futon, you hateful gremlin. Who gave the gremlin a megaphone?
You're under arrest.
Anyways, onto the quasi-gay bros.
Two bros chilling in the
Military truck.
5 feet apart cause they're
Kinda.
gay.
But they kinda are. Now, all that aside, Crow has always struggled with his self-image because of his misfortune semblance.
No one wanted me. I was cursed.
Crow hates himself for causing tragedies to the people around him. To clarify, no, it's not bad luck brought to him, but the people around him, which, as he says, can give him an advantage sometimes.
I bring misfortune. Comes in real handy when I'm fighting an enemy, but it makes it a little hard on friends and family.
But his semblance has also led to him distancing himself from the people he loves for fear of inadvertently hurting them. It's a huge reason he stayed out of sight when Team Ranger was heading to Mistral until he literally had no other choice but to get involved and save them. And this is also what's driven him to alcohol to cope with his loneliness and self-loathing. And it's because of all of this that he was so dedicated to Ozpin. Helping Oz in his mission to protect Remnant from Salem finally made Crow feel like he wasn't a burden without direction.
I gave my life to you because you gave me a place in this world. I thought I was finally doing some good.
So to have that torn away in Volume 6 was utterly devastating for him. And it's why Ruby stepping up and breaking through all the self-loathing was so important and utterly cathartic. Say what you want about her having too many speeches in those last few chapters, but damn do I love Ruby spilling the optimism tea. So now, after seeing Crow resist the temptation to drink from his flask in the Volume 6 finale, we really get to see Crow clean up his act and start to have a more positive outlook on life. He's kinder to the people around him, he tells the kids not to dwell on the negatives.
Jeez, guys, lighten up a little. Enjoy yourselves for a change. You've earned it.
And he's far more open to talk about summer with Ruby. People who say he gave up drinking too quickly and easily are coming at this from the same angle of those who say Yang's PTSD was never properly shown. They wanted it to be overblown and in your face, when really there are invisible struggles that, while they do affect you, they don't become who you are and define your entire experience. Crow clarifying that he gave up drinking after he feels he went too far with a joke about his alcoholism, and getting a bit tense when offered wine at the Schnee dinner party are perfect ways to show Crow overcoming the struggle. It's also nice because, especially in shows targeted for teens and young adults, most of the time older adults in media tend to be one-note archetypes rather than fully fleshed out characters of their own. Almost like once you pass 30 or 35, you're either not allowed to be a fully fledged character, or your story is set in stone and you're pretty much barred from any kind of development or depth. You become a tool for the younger characters and nothing more. So to see someone like Crow get an entire arc to realize the error of his ways and that there is hope for him is sincerely amazing. Other older characters like Gira and Kali had flat arcs to help Blake's arc along, and that would have been fine for Crow. Honestly, that was enough for him back in Volume 3, but I think Volume 5 showcased how, in Crow's case, a flat arc for him kinda makes him feel irrelevant. Even if it had been done right, I can still people wondering why he's even here and why Ruby didn't just kill him. Yeah, it is kind of a meme that people want Crow to die to raise the stakes and make Ruby go, oh, I guess the world is cruel, even though she already knows this? Sometimes I wonder if y'all realize RWBY's not this naive little girl blind to the world's problems, but I digress. But I will admit, I was on the Crow's totally gonna be the mentor who dies train until Volume 7 came along. And now I can't help but find that approach incredibly cynical and reductive. It dismisses the fact that no matter how old you are or what you've been through, you can turn things around for the better and learn to love yourself and live a good life. And I think that's why Clover's friendship with Crow has resonated with so many people, even those who view the pair as a platonic bromance and nothing more. Rarely do you get these healthy adult friendships in media, especially between men, where they actually have a legitimate bond that connects them, and they encourage each other to be better people and to be vulnerable. And yes, Clover following orders and being too arrogant in his semblance for his own good is a good writing choice, despite its nasty complications we'll get to in the Lucky Charms section, but I think it's more than that. Losing probably the best friend he's ever had, partially because of his own actions, is devastating for Crow, and as many people have posited, threatens to undo all the progress he's made. But I sincerely hope that they don't go that route. Yes, it is realistic that many people relapse and don't get better, but I think in a show that's all about finding the light in the darkness, now is the time for Crow to really prove he's learned that, despite the misfortune all around him, some of which his semblance naturally creates, and despite the fact he can still lose people he cares about, that's no reason to give up and go back to how he was before. In fact, it would kind of be a spin in the eye to everyone he cares about. Not only the ones still here, but especially ones he's lost like Clover. If Crow were to turn back to alcohol, I am 100% certain Clover would forcibly come back from the dead to knock some sense into him and go, I did not fucking die for you to go back to that miserable way of living. So yeah, their friendship is great. I am proud of how far Crow's come, and I genuinely hope that even if he might relapse, he will ultimately come through stronger than ever before. Also, the fact he's now voiced by Jason Liebrich really helps to convey he's starting over and becoming a better person. Jason's performance is far better than Vic's in terms of letting Crow emote and sounding like a world-weary guy beyond the edgy, gruff anti-hero I think a lot of people superficially viewed Crow as and want him to remain as. That is just a shell Crow created to survive his self-hatred. And I think he's much stronger than that husk. Plus est en vous, Crow. Plus est en vous. Representation matters. There is no debating that fact. Stories are meant to reflect the truths of our world and our realities, and there are a plethora of accounts that representation of people of color, LGBT people, disabled people, and so on can help to paint general perception of them, for better or for worse. Like, if you personally don't know anyone as part of some of those groups, media representation might be your only avenue for exposure to them to see them as familiar rather than alien. An exposure which normalizes these groups helps to curb harmful misconceptions, biases, and prejudices. Usually when people who aren't members of these groups hear about representation, though, they tend to get a little cagey. They believe that there is this false dichotomy where you must either have a set number of each group represented, or a motorcycle, I guess. Or good writing. And they also think that you must have a plot reason for these people to exist, never mind the fact that characters never require a plot reason to be white, able-bodied, straight, or so on. In fact, that's the default most writers go with, but don't quite realize because, again, this is painted by their own experiences, many of which lack an exposure to these underrepresented groups as normal people, and we all have this to some degree. Though there is contention as to whether RWBY should be considered an anime, a discourse which I literally do not fucking care about because it's so trivial it numbs my brain, it's been clear from day one that RWBY pulls inspiration not only from general storytelling tropes and classic fairy tales, but also anime. Most often people tend to lean towards it being shonen because guns, action, and death. Though I would argue RWBY has much more in common with the magical girl archetype. Something my friend Alex and I have discussed at length before. Hi Alex, you're welcome, and I hope you finally feel validated that I'm willing to be crucified for you. Magical girl animes, as their name implies, follow a team of female main characters, and while many of them feature a lot of action, and in the case of Madoka Magica, yes, guns, they tend to focus more on the emotional journeys of the characters and emphasize the strength of their bonds. Sailor Moon, the most notable example of a magical girl lead who helped to popularize the genre, literally draws her power from the forces of love that she has for everyone around her. Compare that to RWBY, where as the story has become more complex, the action has taken a bit of a back seat, especially during the Anima arc, in favor of the character arcs. And when we do have action, it usually tends to be relevant to the plot, and especially the character arcs. you know, most of the time.
I'm more than a name.
And before y'all ask about the transformation aspect, that's more of a superficial feature rather than an inherent need for magical girl shows. The reason I bring all this up is because anime, especially magical girl anime, has actually been a little bit ahead of Western animation in terms of LGBT rep. Sailor's Uranus and Neptune from Sailor Moon are the most obvious example as a romantic lesbian couple. While they do kind of fit the usual stereotype of same-sex couples where one partner is technically more masculine while the other is more feminine, Uranus actually cross-dresses a bit in the manga and Crystal adaptation as Tuxedo Mask, and even flirts with Usagi, who... oh, she's definitely somewhat into it. Then you've got other anime featuring same-sex couples like Cardcaptor Sakura, Revolutionary Girl Utena, which has a field day with gender roles and, again, Madoka Magica. If you're complaining about SJWs and their radical gay agenda invading anime via RWBY, then you might want to sit down and look into some of your anime history, friend, because Japan was on that shit a long time ago. Note that Cardcaptor Sakura, though, is the only example with a male-male relationship, men loving men, or MLM for short. Granted, we do have Zoisite and Kunzite in the 90s anime adaptation of Sailor Moon, and Fisheye is a transgender woman, but both are kinda dodgy with their reliance on old stereotypes, and in the latter category, there's some predator vibes going on. I bring this all up because when we talk about LGBT representation in particular, the conversations tend to group all the L's, the G's, the B's, the T's, and all those filthy Q's as a single fungible unit, rather than individual groups with some overlap. That kinda don't get along all that well. And that's not even taking into account overlap with other marginalized groups, because life is complicated, y'all. And I get the intimidation that a lot of people, especially straight cis people, might have towards all of this, because no one ever really sat any of us down and was like, here's a handy-dandy guidebook on all the complexities and fluidities of sex, gender, and attraction. Fuck, this even goes for other forms of representation. As a good friend of mine who has autism has been helping me to represent autistic characters in my own stories, as well as characters with disability, because before that I was incredibly nervous I would wind up creating harmful representation that hurts the people I want to help. But oftentimes the most important discussions we need to have are very difficult and complicated, and the best we can do is be honest, listen to those who experience these issues firsthand and know more shit than we do, and if we fuck up, apologize and try to do better going forward. Fuck, the thought of writing this section nearly gave me a fucking ulcer from stress and what any kind of backlash might look like, not only from the usual people screaming in the comments about how I'm a degenerate and a genetic dead end, but also from MLM fans who are genuinely upset and feel I'm being too charitable trying to explain the issue to Ruby at all, along with other fans who are like, come on, you're being too harsh, Crow and Clover are clearly just bros, calm down, sit down, and get over it. So, yeah, I've prepared my whiskey den in advance. And by whiskey, I mean pizza, soda, and all 8 seasons of Winx Club because I hate alcohol, but I need something unhealthy to cope with. But I say this because honestly, RWBY up until Volume 7, Chapter 12 had stellar LGBT representation. And currently its LGBT rep is still up there with the likes of Steven Universe, which, yes, we do like in this house, please have mercy upon my lack of a soul in the comments. Blake and Yang have had a slow, low-key romance going on since Volume 2, with Blake suggested as bisexual where Yang... well, the debate on whether she's a lesbian or perhaps bi or pan is itself rife with a lot of emotion, so let's not even go there right now, because there are other hills I can die on. But there's also Ilya being revealed as a lesbian, Coco, a fashionable lesbian who sadly is only demonstrably gay in After the Fall, which is actually great, go check it out. Sean's sister Saffron, along with her wife Tara and their son Adrian, an interracial female-female married couple, fuck yes, May, a trans woman, the first mate character from Volume 4 who's actually non-binary, and... Scarlet. We'll come back to this. Oh, and there is also potential for RWBY to be asexual, romantic orientations up to interpretation, and Weiss to be demisexual given, her totally not being against hooking up with her waifu, Pyrrha. So RWBY has had a pretty good track record with LGBT rep, most often LGBT women, which is great given they're a far less privileged group than LGBT men, as best encapsulated by ContraPoint's most recent video, where she came out as a trans lesbian, killer of TERFs and trans medicalists, whomst we stan.
Whomst we stan?
Oh, we stan.
We stan.
Oh, we
I stand. Oh, wait, stand.
But the show did come under fire primarily from homophobes after meeting the Kata arcs, and further suggestions of Bumblebee as a romantic pairing, defeating and killing their abuser and tormentor. It was great. But it also resulted in a lot of headaches. Because you see, one of the YouTubers, whomst is, well, not bad, but like, is a tad yikes, but like, again, there's no handbook for this shit, so time for a crash course on the gays. Basically argued that Bumblebee and the Kata arcs aren't impressive representation because, supposedly, it is more socially acceptable and therefore easier to represent female LGBT characters because of a little thing called commodity fetishism. The argument basically goes that because straight men like women, they think women being with women is the pinnacle of eroticism, and therefore while some of them might not like gay people and argue that they don't deserve equal rights, they will touch themselves while fetishizing lesbians and lesbian couples. Ergo, rep of LGBT women is theoretically more readily accepted because 4chan will fawn over them in between all the homophobic slurs. Now, I could have a field day with this and why this does not apply to LGBT representation in RWBY, and it's also an incredibly superficial and shallow examination of LGBT rep and general audience's response to it, and also kinda minimalizes the shit that LGBT women go through on a day-to-day basis. I'd also rather just not give it the merit of being worthy of fully debunking because it has had some really creepy implications of LGBT women, and I am not having my gay sisters subjected to that shit. Y'all are queens. Plus, they also made the argument that it's okay for Juniper to date within the team because they're the minor characters, but somehow romantic ties among main characters is forbidden because, I don't know, I guess romance ruins us as people and makes us forget everyone else in our lives. I don't know, straight folks have a really weird perception of romance as obligatory and miserable that I'm just never gonna understand, nor will I ever want to. Why do y'all view romance as this horrible thing that turns you into a shit person? But coming out of Volume 6, that complaint was a major drive of anti-Bumblebee sentiment, painting this narrative that RWBY were simply using LGBT rep as bait to lure in LGBT viewers, and that LGBT viewers were just idiots who should just accept that no one likes them and go back into their quiet corner until they stop existing. At least that's what a lot of the comments under my Volume 6 review told me. It's hard to translate the language of the gremlins. So while I never want to so much as humor this comment, it is true that different forms of LGBT representation are important because the LGBT community is not a monolith. And it's true that any gay representation in general is rather shoddy in media as a whole. In particular, transgender representation is practically non-existent, while non-binary representation is actually non-existent. But seeing the LGBT rep in RWBY extend beyond cis gay people is something I encourage. Having May as a canonically transgender woman is great, but I do wish that were mentioned in the show to make it undeniable for all viewers, so people knew their waifu was indeed a revolutionary trans icon. And Scarlet, he's only hinted at not liking women, and by extension gay, in the Red Like Roses anthology, while in the show proper, he's a non-character, so thanks, I guess. So enter the hopes that RWBY, in wanting to do more for LGBT rep, hiring new writer Kiersey Burkhart, who would theoretically help given her inclusion of LGBT rep in her own books, and this.
Lucky you.
Lucky you, huh?
God, I regret so much. Now, before I go any further, we need to establish why some people interpreted Lucky Charms as romantic and legitimately believed it would become canon, and why what happened to Clover has caused an incredible amount of backlash. Because regardless of the writer's intentions, that is a reality we must deal with. There are a lot of people, LGBT and otherwise, many not even MLM, who saw Lucky Charms' interactions as romantic, and still read them that way. And yeah, part of this is in the fact that we came off of a volume where we really wanted the show to have some good MLM rep to go along with the rest of its LGBT rep to prove certain folks wrong. But it did genuinely mean a lot to certain people who have felt like media has always either excluded them or told them their lives were going to be miserable and end in tragic deaths because of who they are and who they love. Now, I mentioned earlier why I'm down for Crow and Clover as a potential friendship, but I will recap. Rarely do you see straight men being openly affectionate with one another because apparently being nice is gay. Like, no matter how much you're into women, if you're a dude and you tell another dude you care about them and want to help them become a better person, you are, in fact, a gay. Which is just ridiculous, and we do need more examples of positive straight male friendships in media to combat this, and that is also working in tandem with good LGBT representation, including MLM rep, and That's actually where the issues start cropping up. One of the major arguments I have seen following what's happened is people saying that Crow and Clover were clearly just having a platonic bromance and nothing more, and that people are projecting what they want onto their dynamic, which, I mean, yeah, that does tend to happen when people bring their own experiences to media, especially when their version of a bromance is romance.
God damn it, Bart!
But what unnerves me about this is a hand-waving away of the romantic reading of Lucky Charms without taking into account why people read them that way. And I think that this is where the root folly of miscommunication lies, because that's what this really is. Miscommunication. The writers wanted a bromance, maybe make it a little bit flirty, and they didn't realize that a lot of people would view it as romantic and cling to it as the representation that they've been craving for their entire lives. Which is odd because of how well they've usually done with representation in the past. Hell, fan favorite Pilot Boy was going to be gay back in Volume 5, but they decided against that when other members of RWBY pointed out the issues of Pilot Boy being the first openly LGBT character of the show, only to die immediately. The issue here is that the old bury your gays trope where LGBT characters die at a higher rate disproportionately than their straight counterparts, suggesting LGBT people are just closer to death, I guess. Or that perhaps subconsciously they're more disposable to the people writing them. Miles even expressed some regret in not sticking to Pilot Boy being gay after seeing how much of the fandom loved him, which, Miles, I love you, but no. This is where I really have to start our sit down, because it's clear to me that while the writers are really trying to do their best when it comes to LGBT rep, they might not fully understand what they're doing. Again, because someone didn't hand out guidebooks. But really, the reason why Pilot Boy being gay and dying was a bad call, despite his popularity, is because it reinforces to gay viewers that they are more likely to face tragedy, which can reaffirm a lot of negative narratives they already have drilled into them by their real-life surroundings. Representation is as much normalizing these people as reaffirming to these people that they do belong and that they are seen and acknowledged and deserve happiness. So our Lucky Charms problem is kinda a result of the writers wanting a bromance for Crow, but not taking into account the LGBT reading some viewers indeed had. All the winking, the flirtatious comments, the parallel to the He Gone Bana waitress. God, I regret pointing this out. I regret noticing it, that's how I feel, honestly. Guess I just have to use the gay fool's guide to heteronormative readings of media. Again. Fuck, I'm pretty sure I burned it, actually. And also the fact people have wanted a love interest for Crow with some sort of good luck semblance for years to balance out his bad luck, coupled with the fact that there have been many bisexual readings of Crow because... Look, gays are just really good at finding our own, okay? We have to be if we want to ask someone out without getting punched. So my issue with the outright dismissal is this idea that even despite the fact many LGBT people saw Lucky Charms' interactions as romantic, that they shouldn't have? That they should have just known that these two bros were acting flirty because they really are totes straight because, of course, the default is straight. I'm seeing this a lot from allies as well, along with non-MLM fans, and that is... It kind of feels like a betrayal, honestly. It feels like they don't really understand why so many people read romantic implications into Lucky Charms, and thus they don't really understand LGBT viewers' reactions and interpretations, nor do they prioritize listening to them. But I feel for the writers. Their concern is more along the lines of where if they were to see how much this meant to gay audiences and shoot it down as a possibility, that creates its own problems, when really that actually could have avoided all of this in the first place. Either in show, having Crow and Clover talk about their flirty banter and having an honest conversation about their feelings being romantic, platonic, or somewhere in the middle, or just outside canon where it's clarified that this was intended as a bromance and that the gay audience should not get their hopes up for this, because representation is infinitely more important than potential minor spoilers. So the writers should have made it clear in one way or another that Lucky Charms was not bound for canon waters to avoid reinforcing bad narratives about LGBT men, and if y'all are watching now, I understand you mean well, but I am going to be honest and say, you kinda fucked up. And I'm not trying to cancel or shame them either, because that's not going to help anyone except fueling people's short-term anger and need for retribution. No. I want positive long-term change on a systemic level, and for that to happen, we need as honest and nuanced a discussion as possible. Hence why this section is so long, Jesus Christ. So I tell you this, Miles, Carrie, Eddie, and Kiersey, because I do respect you, and I know you're capable of better. Wow, this sounds super condescending. I am sorry, I did not mean it that way. But I do hope that I'm able to get across this in a more palatable, understandable way. If you want to get LGBT representation right, you have to talk to these people and learn about their experiences with how media normally represents or ignores them, and you have to take into account what your priorities should be. Because in truth, disappointing people early on that a same-sex pairing won't happen and being honest about that is infinitely more important than not wanting to spoil things for them, especially if it prevents them from being horribly shocked by something you have planned later on. It inadvertently reaffirms to certain parts of the audience that no matter what, who they are destines them to a life of unhappiness and a tragic, violent end, because in reality, that's what it kinda did. However, this isn't all on the writers. In fact, the main contributor to the Lucky Charms discourse and the idea they'd become canon has come from other avenues, namely other members of RWBY, and especially the marketing teams for the official Twitter page and Amity Arena. Now for the animators, many of y'all are LGBT yourselves, and I know not all of you are privy to what's happening in the story, so rather than name individuals, I'm just going to address y'all as a collective. And this is also to protect you individually from the internet going wild, because honestly, that's just gonna make shit worse. Please do not attack people over this, my dear viewers, or else I will find and smite you. God, I can't believe I have to say that. This kind of goes hand in hand with my request of the writers to be upfront and honest whether a pairing is meant to be interpreted as LGBT, or just a very emotionally vulnerable straight friendship. If animators are making comments about making these two interactions as gay as possible, or they're doodling fan art of the pairing, then they kinda need to know whether or not the pairing is LGBT or not. Because in any case, people are going to see their comments in fan art, and it will on some level resonate with them that it has the potential to become canon. And yes, this is a tricky conversation to have, because telling animators that they're not allowed to ship characters or make cute fan art is fucking totalitarian. But when it comes to representation, it is always better to be safe than sorry. Whether it's someone in the cast saying bi is fly in regards to the possibility of Crow being bi, not directly saying he is, but also suggesting that he might be, or it's animators talking about making friendship scenes as gay as possible, please just be more careful with what you suggest going forward, and writers, please make sure everyone is on the same page. But then, the marketing. All the tweets promoting Lucky Charms as a pairing, and even the in-app descriptions for Clover and Amity Arena. These are where the suggestion of the pairing as a couple really ramps up, and really sold a lot of MLM fans in particular that this pairing had the makings to become canon. One of my patrons who was devastated from all this, to the point where he wishes he'd never got into the show, described how he bought a card pack just to get Clover specifically because of all the teasing and hinting at Clover being LGBT in show and from RWBY, only to get double charged, and rather than getting his money back, got an extra pack instead. An extra pack he now wishes he didn't have. And all of this has resulted in a shit show where you have not only homophobes saying the gays were dumb for thinking they'd get representation, and that they should just shut up and go away, this time by one of the YouTubers whomst is absolutely awful, but also a divide between upset MLM fans who are so blinded in their anger, which is valid and righteous, that they're attacking RWBY and anyone who defends them, and also people saying Lucky Charms was obviously never going to happen, and to be upset about what happened is actually the real problem. Then you've got MLM fans who felt betrayed and in the worst cases traumatized by all this chaos. And we even have MLM fans who either didn't read romantic implications into the relationship, or they did but downplayed them because they're used to not getting the rep that they want and trying to fight against the MLM backlash because they're worried it reflects badly on all of us. Which, I mean, yeah, it does. But also, I can't help but feel you're kind of focusing on the wrong target and putting a band-aid on a flesh wound. Then you have all the people in the middle who saw this as a very complicated misunderstanding wrought by very poor choices by ultimately decent people who keep trying to bridge the divide so we can all feel better, come to terms, and move forward together, only to get shit from everyone. God, I want to die. The reason I bring all this up, and why I even wanted to carve out an entire section to discuss this, is because representation is important to me, as a gay. I want creators to do better in representing people who aren't like them, so it can both help those who are underrepresented and marginalized feel comfortable in their own existences and not wonder whether they're valid or not, while also showing people who are already represented that these people are just as human and normal as them. It is a slow method of weeding out prejudice, but it is a powerful one, and one that is honestly intrinsic to stories as something that can unite us and show us the truths of our world. RWBY is probably one of my favorite shows ever, and its LGBT representation is genuinely impressive, but it fucked up. It does not make RWBY monsters, not at all, but it is something we need an honest dialogue on, and I'm hoping that this might serve as the start of one. Specifically once I adapt this section into its own video later on, just to make it easier to find for people who want to talk specifically about the Lucky Charms disaster. I denounce the people who are trying to get #FuckRWBY going, because I'm never going to believe in shame. Both because it only leads to more problems in the grand scheme and undermines every good thing we're working towards, and also because it's just a shitty fucking thing to do, even if you feel righteous while doing it. So, if you are one of those people, well, I don't know what I can say, or even if you're still here after leaving an angry comment about how I'm a traitor to my fellow MLMs, but if you stuck around, I would like to thank you, and please to ask yourself, what do you want out of all this? Because I feel like your answer should probably be better representation, which we are not going to get out of attacking people, including other fans trying to de-escalate the situation. However, they are not the root problem of all of this. They are a direct result of the problem, which is RWBY's bad handling of Lucky Charms in an otherwise great volume. And I think the best we can hope for is this becoming a learning experience for everyone involved. So the best way to move on is for someone to sit down and make a stupidly long fucking video essay about why this all happened in a way hopefully the writers and other members of RWBY can understand without feeling like it's someone who wants them guillotined. And, well, I hope I did my part well. Speaking for an entire group of people is kinda hard because I'm just a dumb gay nerd who likes things that make me sad. And if I fucked up, well, please have mercy, I tried. And I wrote this all in one go while having major anxiety listening to Lindsay Ellis' video on why Game of Thrones became shit, and also in the midst of a bad headache on a depressing rainy day, and probably recording when I'm also tired as fuck and wondering what the fuck I'm doing. Ironically, the usual anti-SJW crowd is the least of my worries. But, yeah, I think at this rate, some kind of official statement regarding the Lucky Charms incident, making the writer's intentions for the pairing being platonic clear, while apologizing for inadvertently implicating the romantic potential for fans desperate for representation, with a promise to not only avoid this miscommunication going forward, especially through other members of RWBY as well as marketing divisions, but also a promise to deliver on LGBT rep going forward, specifically MLM representation. And I've also been asked to bring up what many LGBT fans upset about the situation, especially MLM fans, have been hoping for, that Clover be brought back via the Staff of Creation. Whether it's a matter of equivalent exchange that you need a life for a life, or if it's similar to how Penny could return from death, people just want Clover back because they feel like what happened to him was unjust, and to them, nothing else can make things right. And I'ma be real, I don't know how I feel about that. To me, when you start undoing death in your story, you almost always kill any and all stakes, and the story crumbles from there in a matter of seconds. Penny's case is the only situation where I find it perfectly acceptable, and that's only because of the very specific context around her. But I feel like I owe it to the people who are hurt, who I've talked to, a chance for their case to be made and heard. Whether anyone listens, that's beyond my control, and especially feels futile given Volume 8 has been completely written at this point. But you know what? It was worth a shot. It's complicated, and I hope I did not come across as an angry gay tyrant who wants to bathe in the blood of the straights, nor like an MLM fan who's invalidating the genuinely good representation already present in the show, like Bumblebee or the Kata arcs, nor some kind of traitor who's giving the baiters a pass. I'm just a dumb bitch who wants everyone to get the fuck along and work together to form a coalition to end capitalism and cover everything in glitter. Well, that was wild. I'm gonna go take a nap now. Future self who wrote this conclusion, take the reins because right now I'm ready to fucking die.